Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for February 25th. It is now called to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, again, I want to thank everyone for attending this evening. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Whitting.
Present.
Councilmember Dorr.
Excused.
Councilmember Adler.
Excused. She's online. Is she online? Yeah. Okay. My understanding that she's in Washington, D.C.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor King.
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam.
Present.
Mayor Kastema.
Present. At this time, I normally scan the audience for what I perceive as junior high or high school or grade school students. I'm not sure
Mr.
anyone.
Mayor, we have one right here from Rogers High School.
Oh, young lady, please, would you stand and introduce yourself and tell us if there's any special reason you're here this evening?
Well, my name is Melanie Castillo. I'm with Rogers High School, and I came here for my civics project and because my teacher encouraged us to become more educated.
Excellent. Well, if there's anything you would like us to verify that you are here or that we have to fill out any forms, just find any member. They will gladly do that. Thank you for doing that, for being here. I don't see anyone else. Let me just say we do this because we do want to acknowledge the future leaders. As you'll come in to Candle Hall, you'll see to the left a very long list of names. We're going to honor one of those individuals who recently passed away. But we certainly want more people in our community to aspire to become leaders in this community and become on this side of the dais. So thank you for being here. It's wonderful. With that, I would like to move to item number 1, approval of the agenda as written. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. Item number 2 on the agenda, consideration of minutes. 2A is approval of the January 28th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. At this point, we're going to go into presentations and proclamations. And today we have, we are very sorry, it's very sorrowful to actually read a proclamation. One of our former council members has passed away, Mike Deal, who was a mayor in this community. I will move this. Hopefully you can still hear me. I feel like I knew Mike very well, and I feel as if, frankly, I should be standing when I give this proclamation on his behalf. As I mentioned earlier, as you pass through, you will see many names on the wall of previous mayors. Mike's name is on there, and he was there during the early 2000s when many significant activities were taking place in this community. The construction of the pavilion, the construction of this facility, the senior center, the library, all of those items were constructed during his tenure as a council member and as a mayor. I knew Mike very well, and it pained me tremendously to find out that he had passed away. With that, and I'll just add this last point, I tell my colleagues all the time that we are nothing more than the keepers of the torch, the flame, from one leadership to the next leadership. And we look back at all the people who have cared about this community and have given their life dedicated to this community, and we see the results. And it's not us that have done all of that, it's all those who came before us. And with that, we have a torch of leadership, and we will pass it on to subsequent generations. So with that, I will read the proclamation to Mike Deal. Whereas Mike Deal, a Puyallup resident since 1969, graduated from Pacific Lutheran University in 1968 with a degree in communications and received a master's degree in education from Oregon State University in 1972. Whereas Mike had a remarkable career that spanned several fields and was marked by a dedication and service to his community. His professional journey began in high school when he was hired as a telegraph operator for the Northern Pacific Railroad, working summers, weekends, and after-school hours. Whereas over the years, he continued in his role with the Burlington Northern Railroad, the Milwaukee Railroad, and later as a train dispatcher for Tacoma Eastern Railway. I can tell you Mike loved trains. His first career was a testament to his strong work ethic, which continued alongside his other professional endeavors. Whereas after earning his college degree, Mike embarked on a distinguished career in education. For over 30 years, he served in the Puyallup School District as a teacher, counselor, assistant principal, and principal. His influence as an educator was profound, and he touched the lives of countless students, families, and colleagues throughout his tenure. Whereas after retiring from K-12 as the principal of Edgemont Junior High School in 1998, Mike continued to serve as an academic advisor at Pierce College, sharing his expertise with the next generation of students. Whereas Mike also made significant contributions to local government. Elected to the Puyallup City Council in 1989, he served the next 5 consecutive terms for a total of over 20 years of service. His leadership reached a pinnacle when he was unanimously appointed mayor of Puyallup in 2006, a role he held for 6 years. Whereas Mike also made history as the first president of the Rainier Communications, where he continued to serve for many years, helping improve transparency and communication infrastructure for the community. Whereas Mike had an enduring passion for local government, he once said, "I decided to get involved in local government because I believe that's where government has the greatest impact on lives." His service and commitment to the community were foundational to the growth and development of Puyallup. Whereas Mike's professional life was replete with accomplishments in education and city government, his love of trains and everything railroad filled his free time. It was not unusual for Mike to fly across country, ride a train from one city to another, and then fly home. Trips on Amtrak to Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver were a staple of Mike's weekend activities. He often found himself a comfortable perch near some railroad tracks and watched trains go by. It was his lifelong love and a significant part of his vast circle of friends who also shared his passion for railroads. Whereas through all his adventures, his one true lifelong love, Patty, his wife, stood by his side. His love for Patty was endless, and it is the love they shared together that has endured through their 43 years of marriage. Whereas on February 5th, Mike took his last train ride to heaven, where he is now sharing his passions with other angels. Although he is gone, we have not forgotten his incredible legacy in Puyallup. Now I, therefore, Jim Castema, Mayor of the City of Puyallup, Washington, do hereby proclaim February 25th, 2025 as Mike Deal Day. In the City of Puyallup, we honor and we recognize Mike as a local civic leader and ask all residents of Puyallup to remember his life and legacy. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 25th day of February 2025. With that, I would like to have his grandson, Vaughn Gessner, and granddaughter, Bonnie Gessner, please come forward and I will present them with this proclamation.
Jim, thank you so much for this opportunity to stand up at a city council meeting and share a little bit about my grandfather. Thank you for sharing what you were able to through the proclamation. There was a lot of the subject matter that I kind of wanted to touch on in there already, so I'll just say a couple things. My grandfather's love for this city was unparalleled. I was just mentioning how he'd go on vacations and he wanted to talk about Puyallup. Later on in his life, they actually decided to start snowbirding, and that lasted about 2 winters, maybe that, because they had to be back in Puyallup. And so I'd like to read a quote that really resonates with us as we've been experiencing the passing of my grandfather, which is, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed." And that was Booker T. Washington, an educator, much like my grandfather. And when I read that quote, and knowing the backstory of my grandfather and all the challenges that he overcame during his life, to see that he kept acting upon the things that he was passionate about, and this city being one of them, I started to realize that he really led by example. I can't tell you about all the lessons that my grandfather taught me while we were out fishing or this, that, and the other, but I can tell you about all of the times that he pulled 7-year-old me out of school to go have lunch with Senator Castema, right? And he, to go meet with the group of former educators or council members, cutting the ribbon at the newly built train station, again, another project that he was involved on. You might be able to go back and find a picture of me where I cut the ribbon before the countdown, and I was so incredibly embarrassed. And Kathy Turner's looking at me going, and then we got to rehold the ribbon up to cut it again for the ceremonial purposes in the picture. But I would encourage the other members and residents of the city of Puyallup to, if you're passionate about this city and the opportunities and things that it's given you, to do what my grandfather did. Get involved and see what you can do to make a difference in the community. And that was what he was always challenging people to do, was to be the best version of themselves, and be somebody that built up the community around them, because one of the greatest gifts that we can give in our lifetime is to make this world a better place. So thank you again to all of the council and Eric for helping set this up. It's a true honor to be here on my grandpa's behalf, and I look forward to seeing the future projects that we have. And I also want to mention that my mother had wished to have been here today. Unfortunately, she's an Arizona resident and had to go home after the memorial, but she truly wishes she could have been here. It was a special relationship that her and my grandfather had. So thank you again. It's a true honor to be here.
Thank you, Vaughn. On behalf of your grandfather, I can tell you he'd be so proud that you're speaking before us this evening. Remarks by council members. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had my hand up for a different reason, which I'll refrain from at the moment, but I will say that I've had the opportunity to meet the former mayor many times in my youth as well, and am so grateful for the time and the love that he put into our city. And the thing that I remind myself of often about those in my life who have passed on, but what I like to share with others is that, they say that you die twice. One is when your physical body passes on, and the second time is when they stop telling stories about you. And, I don't know much, but what I do know is that Mayor Deal will continue to be talked about, and stories of his advocacy for our city will continue to be told for many, 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 many years to come. And for that, I am grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it was Vaughn, right? Yeah, so thanks for sharing those words. I did have the opportunity to hear you speak at your father's memorial service a few days ago. Appreciated the opportunity to be there and to witness, various folks speak of him. I just want to remind, I think even what the mayor said, I remember when I first, part of what inspired me to run for city council was the council that your father sat on. I remember when my children were little, for kind of a civics lesson, I would take all three of them, and they were pretty young. We're talking like grade school, like 3, 5, 7 years old. And I would take them down to the small little council chambers that used to be the old, whatever it was down there, I don't know what it was, small little building, and watch your father and some of the council members kind of interact with city. And it was during that moment where the kind of the flame lit for public service that kind of inspired me, and I felt that call. But waited for the timing of that call of when I initiate the call, and that council that your father sat on certainly served as a catalyst to inspire, as the mayor put, kind of passing of the flame. The second thing is I always admired that council collectively that he was on over those many years. And even though many of them, not speaking of your father per se, but just many of them I may have philosophically disagreed with on certain policy issues or whatever, but one of the things that I always respected about them collectively, including your father, is at the end of the day, they got stuff done. And it wasn't just words or actions, but we could tangibly look around and see in the city, the building that we're sitting here in, and it houses all of our employees as a public building, happened under their watch, and he was part of that. As was mentioned, the pavilion and the park and all those things, the condos that were built with the senior center, and all these things happened under that sphere. And I challenged myself and our council, what have we physically, tangibly put up? And that's been the things I've been challenging. We got to step up and get some stuff done. And so anyway, it was a role model for me. And then lastly, I would say, Vaughn, and I mentioned to you, in private, and I'll mention it publicly. I understand you live in Sumner, great town, love Sumner, and I understand they could use a good council member in Sumner. And so if they ever need someone in Sumner, you have my endorsement. You come and see. I'm sure there'll be a few other folks who will get behind you and run for city council. Sumner needs good people, just as Puyallup does. And so I know that if you wanted to continue that legacy in Sumner, we would love to have a sister city with some great council members kind of teaming up together. So know that's in your back pocket if you want it to carry that flame on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those comments. With that, we will now move on to citizen comments. Thank you again for being here. Citizen comments will be taken at this time, and I have to provide some instructions here. It's very important that if you wish to speak, that you fill out one of these forms. And you can go ahead and go up and fill one out even when people are talking. We have found that it's important to fill out a form so that if we have to get back with you, we have the appropriate information to do so. So I just want to emphasize that if you want to speak this evening, please go ahead and fill out one of these forms. It can be somewhat cryptic in what you would like to speak to, but we do need some contact information to get back with you. Let's see, with that, before the instructions are given, I'm going to call on you, Councilmember Adler, because I saw your hand back up. Please go ahead. What would you like to state at this time?
Thank you. Just very quickly, I was having some audio issues when I was joining at the top of the meeting, so I just want to make sure that the record reflects that I am present for tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.
Certainly, we did note that. Is that all the reason your hand was up? Okay, we definitely see you, Lauren. You are front and center on the camera. Okay, with that, could I have the clerk please read the guidelines for public comments?
Yes, this part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson, your name is still on the screen. Is that? Okay, excellent. Okay, with that, I will call the first person. Steve Aldrich, please. Okay.
My name's Steve Aldrich. I live that close to the southern edge of the 3rd District. I could stand up here for 3 minutes and talk, and in 3 weeks, most people won't even remember what I had to say. So I'm not going to show any PDFs, graphics, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go back to the basics, and I guarantee you'll remember this 3 minutes. So what I have here represents Puyallup, city limits, all the people in the city. Multinational culture. And here we have UGA. Same thing. Here we have the city council. This is open. Planning department, go update your comp plan. Okay? They update their comp plan. They have multiple years to do it. I get 3 minutes to speak. They have multiple years to do it. And they do it. They take public input, workshops, all that stuff. But the only thing that reflects in the comp plan is the people that talk within the city limits. The people out here in the UGA pretty much got ignored. This represents the comp plan. So they pass the comp plan, put it in there, they pass off the planning commission. And they pretty much rubber stamp it. They're giving it to you now. So now you have the comp plan. It's up to you what you're going to do with it. Okay? The people out here in the UGA feel that they got ignored because no planning was done in the UGA. Now, I don't think the planning department even understands what the UGA is supposed to be for. The county designates the UGA. Your growth is supposed to actually happen in the UGA, but there's no planning in this plan for the UGA. So what do the people out here in the UGA think? It's obvious what they think. But we got a plan. Say you pass without a change. You got a plan. 2 years go down, and people move in to your city. Your city's getting full. More and more people. These people are getting a little upset because their infrastructure is failing. They're not planning for your schools, your fire, your police. All that's to be affected. We keep adding more. To the point, it's no longer in your city, it's in your UGA. But your plan didn't plan in your UGA.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Now this people in there are starting to think, maybe this plan wasn't that good. Maybe we should have stopped and said something different. Maybe we should have planned for our future. Every one of you plan for your future. You start out a small house, you plan for a bigger house, you plan for a family, you plan for your finance, you plan for all that stuff. The city needs to plan for this too. Now the people in here are not happy. And that's what they think. That's what I'm agreeing. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for that presentation. I will. I definitely will. Thank you, Steve. Let's move on to, is it Jay Beck? Excellent.
Jay Beck, 122 West Main, owner of the Rose Restaurant, serving now 35 years in the downtown core. I'm here to speak on the policy direction for the future of the parklet program. The parklets in downtown area take a small public space and replace it with seating, beautiful flowers, greenery, and provide a more inviting pedestrian environment, increasing foot traffic to the businesses downtown. It generally enhances the environment of the downtown area, provides a safe space for gathering and for meeting. These are things that people forget about that these parklets provide. They're essentially acting as an extension of our parks at the street level. They're little mini parks. The parklet out in front of the Rose Restaurant and Lick Homemade Ice Cream within the last several years has been a popular spot and a casual spot for people meeting, socializing, and gathering. And if you've been by my restaurant recently, there's some signage that says that on there about community and gathering. The Rose closes at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. The remainder of the afternoon and well into the evening, if you drive by, you will see people, citizens and visitors, walking and gathering in the downtown corridor using those parklets. I can recall a week ago a 4-year-old girl sitting there with her parents learning to tie her shoes. There was an elderly couple. She was just recovering from hip surgery and was taking a break there on the parklet at 4 in the afternoon. As an aging and elderly friendly downtown, it's unfortunate we do not have spots to sit down at anymore. These parklets provide that. Last year, Puyallup Main Street Association made a large investment in beautifying these by making custom flower boxes, beautiful geraniums, and greenery provided by Vassie's Nursery. With the rising food costs, eggs, insurance, I'm asking you to consider authorizing an additional 1-year extension and not requiring a fee that would burden a small business like me.
30 seconds.
I remind you, this is a community asset. This is an extension of our parks at the street level. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next individual, Doc Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doc Hansen, District 2. I thank you for the proclamation. I knew Mike very well, too. As a private consultant, I talked to Mike a lot. And I watched all of the things that he was involved in. Saying that, I came here tonight because I wanted to address something related to the comprehensive plan. You have it scheduled for the first reading at the next council meeting. Compared to other jurisdictions, though, Puyallup is way ahead of schedule for adoption, even though the state has indicated that it is due by the beginning of the 1 year. I want you to consider this before you approve the reading. Several comments regarding the plan have been submitted to you, and you will get some more in the next few days. Not just my comments. I've already given a lot of comments. Some of these comments you may not want to address at this particular time, but there are a few map changes and some policy changes that are proposed through these comments that could be made easily if they're accepted. I would like to propose that these comments at this time be given to the staff for their response. I don't suggest the kind of responses staff often makes when they receive comments on a final impact statement. I've done those before where the answer to it is comment noted. It was something because we're dealing with a lot of the same comments. But I'm looking at the kind of professional responses that might help you decide whether a suggestion made is a good idea or not, and why. I think that's important for you in making your decision. I propose this because I want to remind you that this is a 20-year plan. You've been reminded that a number of times, and that you don't want to rush into this. You want to consider some of these comments and some of these recommendations. Some of the suggested changes might provide the flexibility that I know we're going to need to meet our objectives. The growth is going to happen. Change is going to happen. Whether we're trying to stop it or not, it's not going to work. It's going to happen. You have a choice to manage this change. That's manage it, which is what this plan is supposed to do. Or this change can happen without direction or without any management, and the actions that might not be beneficial or meet the objectives that you're trying to do within the comprehensive plan. Again, I propose and ask you to have the staff review these so that you can hear from the staff and their professional opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. I would ask that you forward those suggestions to council members, please. Okay, we'll now move on to, and I hope I get this correct, is it James Seth Ivers? It's a penmanship issue. I'm glad I got it right.
Yeah, my name is James Seth Ivers. I'm down on River Road. The last 19 years I've owned a business down there. Penmanship. That's because they don't even teach cursive no more, do they? And I tried to write it in cursive. So anyway, the reason I came here is I need to hit some more meetings. I need to come in and not just be a keyboard warrior. I need to come here in person. And it's opportunities like this. I mean, hearing about the past mayor, that sounds amazing. I could only wish to follow in footsteps similar to your grandfather. I get pretty emotional when I think about the future because I'm pretty worried about what there is for the youth to do out here. I mean, you guys have seen like what's going on and like epidemic. I'm on River Road, so I'm seeing overdoses and car theft, break-ins. I'm not here to like complain because obviously you guys are trying to do your job. I'm here to look for solutions. And so one thing that you guys had, I've been going to meetings for a long time in different communities to get skate parks built. I graduated in '95 in Bethel District, and back then there was no skate parks in Washington State. And I know it's not a Parks and Recreation meeting. This is a city council meeting. And but I just wanted to raise some awareness and speak up for the kids that don't get to come here. I mean, we have a couple of youth here, but most of the kids are probably at home playing video games, honestly, or watching TV or whatever kids do on the computer, I guess, at some point. But so I used to tell my teacher in high school, I told Mr. Parsons, I was like, there's going to be skate parks all over. And he said, no, there's not going to be no skate parks. Like, skate parks a dying thing for kids to do. People don't skateboard. That's California. And now in Washington State, there's over 350 skate parks, more than any other state. And in Washington State, there's the least amount of covered skate parks, meaning there's no roofs over them. You can't go skate on a day like today. There's nothing good about skating in the rain. It ruins your board. It's too slick. It's not safe. And so it might be part of the reason why lately the skate park has been locked up, because of ice and snow and miscommunication and new people working for the Parks and Rec and all that stuff that comes with it. Anyway, what I'm looking for is 20 years ago, I went to meetings to get a park built up at Meridian Habitat Center, back when Pierce County Parks and Rec bought that. It was the biggest purchase they ever had. 30 seconds, right? That's going to come up. I got 30 seconds left.
30 seconds.
All right, thank you. Then 10 years ago, I went to meetings when they had one up there at the YMCA on South Hill. It was a cover. And they built a YMCA skate park, and they tore it down in like 6 months. And then they kept building and built a place to go work out at a gym and all that. Got it. Well, now we're down here trying to get one built on Shaw Road, which 5 years ago I went to meetings over here before COVID. And now we're trying to get one down here in Puyallup, maybe move it over by McDonald's or something. But we need a cover for these kids to skate consistently. So I know my time is up.
Speakers reached 3 minutes.
And I appreciate it. I'll come to the next meeting for Parks and Rec, and I'll get to talk more. But just this is kind of a springboard for that meeting. I just want to get you guys thinking about it, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Tim Mellema, please.
Hello, my name is Tim Mellema. I live at 335th and Meridian out in Eatonville. I own real estate and business in downtown Puyallup. I was just talking to Councilmember Johnson before this. We've had a lot of contentious meetings the last 10, 12 years. You guys have done an amazing job cleaning up the homeless situation downtown Puyallup. Spring Street looks like it was a war zone for 10 years and it's clean now. Really, you've done a great job on all of that stuff. That wasn't what I was here to talk about though. I am one of the owners of the Forum in Puyallup. We've been in operation for 11 years. Really appreciated you guys coming up with the parklet idea and springboarding that, doing it first as I think a 1 year or 2 year plan in COVID, then doing the 3-year extension, looking at it. Carrie Yanisak's hit it out of the park with the flower pots. I had a slightly different take with, it is a hard industry to make money at with no tip credits. The minimum wage is high as it is, all the inflationary pressure, all that stuff. I agree with the gentleman that owns the Rose Cafe that they do have a benefit to the community, but I'm also the kind of guy that wants something that a business benefits from to pay for. So I would be supportive of you guys maybe looking at like a 50-50, where if the Parks Department says it's cost $1,500 a year to bring it here, take it away, and maintain it, maybe you charge the businesses $750 or something, some sort of balance. It does obviously make the place beautiful with Cruise Puyallup, everything else going on. I mean, you guys are really turning this city into a place that people want to be. It was strung out junkies for 10 years everywhere, and you've really done an amazing job turning it around. It's not easy to do. A lot of pushback from a lot of people, a lot of accusations that people don't care if they don't think people should be strung out everywhere. So you guys have done a really, really fine job on all of that. And Meredith Neal is killing it as a business development officer, or whatever you guys call her. She's made Puyallup as business friendly as Tacoma's been for a decade. I mean, she's been amazing. And then last thing, because I got a few more seconds, I don't know if you guys know, but when New Hope came in, the first thing they did is they booted the Meeker Fellowship AA Hall out of their building. Meeker Fellowship's been over by Station Ubrew for 10 years. They are homeless in a couple days. They desperately need to find a building. They need about 1,000 square feet. They can pay about $1,800 a month. You want to talk about something that cleans up our city? When you've got people that are actively working AA, it changes people's lives. So I don't have any specific affiliation with them at all, but I know a lot of people that go there, and they are desperate need of a home.
Thank you, Tim. Next, Chris Chisholm. By the way, that is the last of these that I have. If you would like to speak, please go ahead and fill out the form and submit that. Proceed.
Thank you, Chris Chisholm, District 2. I hesitated to come up and speak because the last couple times I have asked you to address something on the agenda. You just passed it without comment on, as if it were a consent agenda. This time I'm speaking about the Planning Commission appointments. My three representatives, or Councilmember Johnson, King, and Gilliam, were the three apparently that were the committee to recommend the commission appointees. And I don't know any of the only way I know some of the Planning Commission members that were up for renomination were from coming to Planning Commission meetings. And I heard that Heather, the chair, was nominated. Maybe you can correct me on that, but you didn't renominate, the most experienced and incredibly good facilitator chair of the Planning Commission. Then we have somebody else who I believe applied, who has been the most participatory citizen over the last 3 years at Planning Commission meetings and City Council meetings, who was, I think, for the third time rejected. He knows more about these topics, Planning Commission topics, than most anybody on council. I mean, you guys are asking staff, basic questions about the comp plan and what terms mean and definitions mean. And, these two that I think were, submitted their applications were rejected, including a returning member, over the top, instead people that haven't been participating. And so, I just really ask you to actually address that topic when you get to it on the agenda and say why it is. Not that just you chose these people that you knew and you liked and you aligned with politically, because clearly this is a political appointments, instead of choosing people that actually know what they're doing. But why did you reject some people? Actually address that. And the other people that weren't on the committee, challenge these almost consent agenda type nominations. And so we have good people on Planning Commission. All right. And I know you are going to try to justify that the ones they chose were good, but they're going to have a big learning curve when, two of the people I think that applied would have no learning curve. They would continue doing excellent work on Planning Commission because they know what's going on. So please, as my representatives, try not to do things so politically, do things so that we have good people on Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak? Fine. In the future, you may do that, ma'am, but in the future, I would like people to fill out one of these forms so that we can reconnect back with you if there is an issue to do that. So, but please go ahead. I'm not going to deny you. If you'd like to speak, please. But I need you to state your name, please.
Yes.
And again, in the future, if you could, please just fill out one of these. It would be appreciated.
Yes,
Proceed.
no problem. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name is Angelina Izquierdo. This is my second time here, so I appreciate the instructions. I'm here to talk about trying to hold police accountable. When I talk about police, I mean local police, so the PPD, Puyallup Police Departments, as well as the Pierce County Sheriff Department. I've had quite many experiences from them, and I would like for them to be held accountable for doing their jobs. As from my experience, they've been reluctant to even filing police reports. They have lied to me. They've had comments laced in sexism and racism. And for me, just being a woman who's Puerto Rican and even yelling out white power to me and stating proudly that they're from the KKK, yes, the Ku Klux Klan, and denying me a police report is not okay. And even turning off their body-worn cameras, which is against the law. I wrote a little acrostic poem laced in satire, so some sarcasm, what have you, bunched up with my experiences. So it's labeled as Dirty Cops. It says drastic, illegal, reluctant, training yonder, capturing opposite people syndrome. I am innocent. I am a sexual assault and human trafficking victim. And from that comes with a lot of cases. So I've had a lot of interaction with both departments. I wish that they be held accountable via audits. So it's something that's manageable and within your budget as well. It could be AM as well as PM because things can happen during the day that can be different from the PM, depending on who's on shift. And depending on who's on charge as well. And there's also the different procedures between the two precincts. Between the redistricting, I've been in Puyallup for almost 2 decades. 2 decades now. And there's been the redistricting in which there's out of jurisdiction for PPD to be up on top of the hill. Thank you. And then there's also the Pierce County Sheriff's likely to send me out to Tacoma to solve my problems when I live in Puyallup. My address says Puyallup on it. So I hope that we can do that. And as well as PPD being applied into Southside 911 for procedures for online reporting system. They're the only precinct that's not included in the list. So it'd be very much
Mr. Mayor,
appreciated.
speakers reach 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was informed that our police, per your comments last time you spoke,
Yes.
did attempt to reach out to you.
Yes.
Having said that, could you please provide updated contact information to our clerk, and I will make sure that there is another attempt to do so.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am. Okay, with that, we are now going to move on to the fourth item on our agenda. Seeing no further comments, we're going to move to agenda item number 4, the consent agenda. This is where we put a number of items together, and with one vote, we suffice the necessary vote to pass those. They are generally things that are very agreeable by everyone, all the members. Having said that, if there is a member who would wish to withdraw one of these consent items and move to another portion of the agenda, please make that known, and I will do so. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? From a member, do I have?
I make a motion.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Excellent. Motion passes on the consent agenda. Let's move to number 5, And this is a 5A, which is a resolution setting a public hearing to consider latecomers agreement with Russell and Lori Freiberg. And we'll have Ken Cook come forward to introduce this resolution.
Good evening. Ken Cook, Development Engineering Manager with the city. So tonight we have before you a resolution to set the public hearing date and at a second reading date to consider the latecomer agreement with city residents Russell and Lori Freiberg. The dates are Tuesday, March 25th for the public hearing and Tuesday, April 29th for the second reading. So tonight we're just setting the dates, not discussing the latecomer agreement itself. Just a brief background, the Freibergs extended sewer, city sewer, 360 feet to serve their new single-family home. And so there's 7 lots in the proposed latecomer agreement, which includes the Freibergs lots, so 6 and 1. That's pretty much it for right now. Turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions at this time.
I have a question. Just to be clear, they are the ones that are going to put in the sewer line, then they want approval for a latecomers agreement so that any subsequent owner that comes along will help compensate for that. Is that correct?
That is correct, yep.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that you had to go through this type of process, but you live and learn. So are there any questions? Okay. With that, you need a motion, correct, to approve a resolution to do so?
We do. Please, yes.
And again, this is to do nothing but to set a date.
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that, do I have a motion to approve the resolution to set a date for this particular latecomers agreement?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, opposed. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much. That was a nice short presentation. 5B is a resolution confirming appointments to various citizens, volunteer boards, and commissions. City Clerk Dan Vessel, will you introduce the resolution with the particular specifics?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Casma. So, Council, before you this evening, we have a resolution regarding the recent recommendations by the Ad Hoc Committee for multiple positions on our volunteer boards and commissions. The Ad Hoc Committee completed these interviews on Tuesday, February 18th. The interview process took a little north of 3.5 hours. We had 16 applicants for the positions. And what you have before you this evening is a resolution with those recommendations. And I will just briefly read off the boards or commissions as well as the individuals that were recommended. For the Arts and Culture Commission, we have Patience Cheggy. Civil Service Commission, Jim Kelly. Design Review and Historic Preservation Board, Diana Wolf and Shelley Schumpf. Planning Commission, Greg Martin, Kyle Landon, Richard Kilsgard, and Tracy Taylor. Senior Advisory Board, Ellen Bradley Mack. Following a approval, should that come this evening, my office will open additional, we'll always take applications. We never turn away an application for these. But we will begin advertising and pushing out again in May to fill the remaining slots that we have open. We would still have 3 openings on the Arts and Culture Commission, 1 opening on Council Salary Commission, 1 Design Review and Historic Preservation Board opening, 1 opening on our Senior Board, and then at that time we'll also be looking to fill the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee seats. There are 6 of those. 3 for recipients of LTAC funds, 3 from hoteliers who receive those funds.
Thank you for that. How long does a person serve on one of these commissions?
So the answer to that depends on the opening. Typical term is a 4-year term. That is if the individual is filling an unexpired term. However, we do have some of these openings that have been created due to resignations. Some folks have moved out of the city, which precludes them from serving on that board or commission. So it's possible that some of these may be filling a shorter term. Some are, I think, 2 years. I think one is a 3-year term. In that event, that individual does have the option by code to reapply for that seat in the future and actually apply 2 additional times.
Okay, and the application process, I assume that it's a standard application process where everyone fills out the same application, correct?
No, sir. The application does vary depending on the board or commission.
Okay.
Certain boards and commissions have requirements that others don't. So, for example, on our Arts and Culture Commission, a supermajority of that commission must reside within the city limits of Puyallup. The rest of those members must have a business or operate in an employment faction within the city in a specific fashion. They have to work at an art facility, be a teacher of the arts, somewhere along those lines. In contrast, for example, Senior Advisory Board, you must be a resident of the city of Puyallup. So the different boards have different requirements based off of code or based off of state statute.
Okay. Do members have any further questions of Dan? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Actually, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, certainly. Councilmember Whitting.
We have had some public comment about an expression of concern about the Planning Commission particularly. Dan, how many applications were there for the Planning Commission?
I believe we had 7 individuals apply for the Planning Commission. There were 4 open seats.
Okay, and do we, I gather that one of those applicants had served a previous term?
That's correct.
And it's obviously we've got an experienced person as opposed to others that may not. I take it we don't give any particular preference to existing members of the commission.
I can't speak for the committee. All I can say is that when the applications are provided to the committee, should an incumbent of a board or commission reapply, I do denote on that schedule that they are an incumbent, but I can't speak for the committee as to their selection of the individuals.
It's interesting because I don't know any of the people that are appointed, we're proposing to appoint, and I do know Mr. Romich because he's here often, and our past chair I don't know well, but I am familiar with her, and it's a little curious to me. Is this something that I'd like to propose we table the Planning Commission portion of this and give me a chance to get a little more comfortable with the folks that are being offered up here.
And Councilmember Whitting, just to make a point, at this time we only, well, not at this time, effective the first Wednesday of March, we would only have 3 sitting members of the Planning Commission, which would not meet the requirements of a quorum for future meetings unless and until council appoints at least one more individual to fill that so they can meet a quorum.
So I hear that concern. Given that Greg Martin is, I'd like to offer an amendment to this that we approve Arts and Culture, Civil Service, Design Review, and Senior Advisory Board, and Greg Martin, given that he's got the 2-year term, and that we table the additional 3 Planning Commission folks and give us a chance to consider those a little more.
And Councilmember Whitting, also just so that you're aware, Richard Kilsgard, who is on the list, is also an incumbent of the Planning Commission.
Okay, so I would propose that we substitute Richard for Greg then.
Okay, there is a motion before us. For that motion to move forward, there needs to be a second. Councilmember Adler.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a question for Councilmember Whitting. I just want to be clear that I understand the motion correctly. Councilmember Whitting, is the last, what you just shared at the end, is that part of your motion to remove
So let me restate.
Thank you.
I move we approve the committee recommendations with the exception of Greg Martin, Kyle Landon, and Tracy Taylor. And we bring the remaining planning commission seats back at a future time.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We have a motion in front of us. Is there discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. To succeed, you would need 4 votes, and I believe that failed. So now let's move on to, now before us, we have no motion in front of us. So I would ask a member, I will entertain a motion to either make a similar motion to Councilmember Whitting. It has to be different, but could be similar, or we approve it as suggested by this particular subcommittee that we have formed. Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I'll make this clear. I make a motion that we accept the full recommendations by the committee for approval this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, is there discussion? Councilmember Whitting.
I'm just curious why we're trying to move this issue ahead. I could very well support Greg Martin, Kyle Landon, and Tracy Taylor, but I was not a member of the committee, and I would just like to understand that, and it seems like this vote is preempting my ability to understand the qualifications of these people as compared to others. So I'm a little disappointed that I don't get that chance, and I would hope that the council would reject this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. Let me just state that in the past, we have a subcommittee who goes through extensive interviews. As you heard, it was 3.5 hours that they went ahead and interviewed all of the different applicants. And there is usually, in that process, there is some discretion given to those individuals. If any of the individuals who are on that would like to speak on behalf, feel free to do so. And in the past, we have given deference to council members for going through that process, weeding through the applicants, and making the decisions that they do. As you can see, I just informed this in your explanation that there will not be a quorum on March 3rd. I understand, Councilmember Whitting, that your amendment would have been able to satisfy that, but your amendment did not pass. So we do have a motion before us now that would, in fact, ensure that there is a quorum on March the 3rd. Having said that, would any other member like to speak? Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. The process and being on council for the first time, learning people, getting a 10-minute window to listen and ask our list of questions that are very common for every candidate to be asked, getting to the heart of what the purpose of the committee is. All I can say is I don't look at political party. I look at listening to everybody, looking to what would be the best for the city. And so I can't really say it's party affiliated. It's just we ask the questions, we hear the response. If we want new blood on the committee, or if we want opportunity for people, we just hear what the responses are and respond to the responses. Behind the scenes, council members go back and forth on what we heard and how we feel like would really be able to articulate the best vision in moving forward. So, it was a very, very long interview process, and everybody got the same questions, and we just made the best decisions that we could. So I am pleased with the nominees that we did pick, and I hope that the city council would be willing to support that decision that we all made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur everything that Councilmember Gilliam had mentioned, and I request that we move forward with the current nominations, and I call for the vote.
Okay. Vote has been called. I don't think that that is necessary. Actually, there would be a vote for that. I would, if I could just ask your, a pause. I would like to give Councilmember Adler the opportunity to speak. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As someone who has gone through this process as a candidate prior to my service on the city council a few times, and have even been interviewed by a few of you sitting on the dais, again, obviously before I was elected, I'm very familiar with the process, and I don't so much have reservations or concerns about the process because I do think that it is solid. I will share that tonight I'm going to abstain because I do think that I have additional questions born out of public comment this evening that frankly I would like to vet and find out. Find out more information about, and so I felt necessary to share that with colleagues here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the mayor's opinion that discussion is over. We will now go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion by Councilmember Johnson indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay. We have one nay.
Abstain.
I understand that. One abstention, and we have 4 approvals. With that, we'll now move on to other business, which is 6A, Parklet Program Policy Direction. Dan, you're the man of the hour. Continue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we have before you this evening, Council, is a request for policy direction regarding the parklets that are available throughout the city. Just a brief history. The Parklet program began in June of 2020 when Council passed Resolution 2412, which authorized the pilot program for the parklets during the COVID pandemic. At that time and for the subsequent years, businesses were charged a $10 de minimis licensing fee for the use of the parklets, and then they were also required to carry a specific policy limit for their insurance. That policy, that pilot program, has been extended several times, last being in February of 2023. And before you this evening, I'm here to seek a future of this program. Currently, the Public Works Department estimates that the annual cost to the city to deploy the parklets, maintain the parklets while they're in use, and then remove the parklets comes to approximately $1,500 per calendar year. That comes out to $10,500 annually over the 7 parklets if all of them are used. So what I'm here before you this evening is to request that direction, and as staff sees it, there are 3 opportunities for that program. The first would be for council to discontinue the program entirely. The second would be to make the program permanent, and council would provide at that point a specific starting and ending date of the operational season, as well as determine a policy for a cost recovery fee based off of that $1,500. The third would be to authorize a 1-year extension of the pilot program, again with specific operating dates and then that fee recovery system. Speaking briefly on the fee, council has some information in the agenda bill, but we did reach out to the businesses that had the parklets last year, and what we heard back is that 3 of the businesses would not be interested in proceeding if there was a fee. 3 of them indicated that they would be interested in proceeding with the fee. I would note that 1 confirmed that they would be okay with the full, if it was proposed, $1,500. However, they would be asking for something a little more reasonable due to the high insurance rates. 1 business reached out and was specifically requesting a lower fee from council due to the insurance. And speaking on the insurance, we do know that has been a significant cost increase. 1 business informed us that it was $1,500 of an increase to their insurance just for the parklet program. That was at the WCIA required insurance level of $2 million per incident. Speaking tangentially about other cities in our area, we have done some research on that. City of Sumner provides the parklets at no cost to the individuals. They do have the same WCIA insurance requirement. On the other hand, cities such as Bellingham, they charge $900 for the use of parklets, and they actually require the businesses to provide their own parklets, whereas we provide the parklets to the businesses. And also one last thing, should council determine that there be a fee for this, there's the option I would propose that be set up on a payment plan as one alternative, so the businesses don't have to provide that at the outset. What I would propose is an operating period of the parklets beginning May 1, and the parklets would be available for use through October 31st. That provides a 6-month window for the businesses to use the parklets, and whatever fee associated that council chooses, the businesses could pay up front, or we could split that up over the duration of the 6 months to help offset that cost, so the parklets in turn, as they generate that business for the local establishments, they could use that to pay for the parklets.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dan, City Clerk, I think when this initially started, it was because of a pandemic, and we're trying to keep restaurants alive, and we had some really strange conditions going on, so it was unprecedented for sure. And then as we began to come out of that, there seemed to be some indication of some ambiance and some things that kind of thought, hey, we kind of like this. So we kind of think council extended it and did a little more extension, and now we're back at it again. That being said, I like them. I would propose that we continue. I'm not sure indefinitely, maybe I'd be open to that, but at least another extension in some capacity. I do wonder, how many units do we have, Dan?
We have 7 parklets.
Only 7 out of the whole downtown. And if I recall right, was there parameters that we set guidelines on that, in other words, those eligible businesses had to be within a certain perimeter, or is it anywhere in the downtown core? Is there any parameters?
I'm not aware of the parameters. I believe that there were some at the outset. I know that our public affairs officer, Eric Johnson, has a list of businesses that he communicates with in the past to open those up for a lottery system. The businesses respond back and indicate that they're interested, and then if we have more than 7 businesses indicate that they're interested, we hold a lottery to determine which one of those applicants get the parklet.
Do you know if we're, of course, have the last year or two, has there been a lottery system, or have we just had 7 or less candidates? I mean, I'd like to know if there's a lottery system.
Last year we had 7 businesses enter the lottery. One chose to withdraw their application due to the insurance concerns.
Okay.
And then following the lottery, we had a separate business, Lick, reach out and indicate that they were interested. When the one business withdrew their application, I reached out to Lick, and they proceeded with their parklet.
Yeah, I think, I would kind of be open. I mean, I think there should be some nominal fee the city upkeep. I don't think the city budget's going to break or make on this. But the only concern that I guess I'm thinking down the road is that for most businesses, there is some value to that business that benefits them specifically. It's not just public benefit, but that's an extra 2 to 3 tables that they're able to seat during a peak time when we have all these events. So it's a profitable extension of their business out into the sidewalk, and it creates some ambiance to kind of gather at that. So I think there is some, value that it should pay for that. So I'll pause there for a moment. So let me ask this question. The businesses that utilize tables on the sidewalk, we're not charging for that, are we? Or do we charge for that? And I'm talking about not in the park, but there are some that have some extensions out there where they have some sidewalk seating. Do you know, is that something that we charge for? Or is that kind of something that we just allow through a permit process?
I'm not aware of that, sir.
Okay. So, that's interesting too. So, if some are getting some seating on the sidewalk and then they have the parklets and we're only charging $10, that seems like, kind of a little bit of a interesting. Again, I'm not opposed. I'm just trying to think out loud, right? What happens if everyone starts doing that? The other thing is that, what if it gets to the point to where these are becoming so successful because it's only a $10 investment? One transaction would pay for that for the whole, 6 months. If you had just, one good lunch there with some good tips. So, and the rest of it's pure profit. So, like, what happens if other businesses say, hey, I kind of want a piece of the pie for $10? Now, granted, it doesn't seem like there's been an outpouring, but we've improved them since the last year, so there might be some more benefit where people say, hey, I want one for $10. So I guess I'm a little, I love the public benefit. I do think that there should be a fee more than $10 for the value that's being provided. I think what that fee could be, I know there was a reference tonight, I think we said $1,500. I think somebody mentioned it should be $10. Somebody mentioned it should be half. I would kind of go for the compromise of the happy middle. Maybe we charge $750 at least initially for the next year and see what kind of turnout we have. And if there's no turnout and all we have is 7 businesses, well, then maybe that answers us. But maybe if we start realizing, hey, we got 10, 12 different businesses who want it, maybe then we start to raise the cost and do a lotto. So I would support an extension on this. I would support maybe splitting the cost in good faith to provide value for our citizens who are in the area, but also provide great value for the business to help them in their seating. And the other thing, I love the idea that you mentioned, Dan, of the payment program. I understand cash up front. So you take that cost of $750, you divide it by whatever that is, in 6 months, maybe it's $100 and some change a month. The question would be to that business owner, is there value at $100 a month to have 7 days a week, 2 to 3 extra tables, do the math on that. Maybe there's some benefit there. So anyway, overall, I like the program. I had proposed that we make an extension. I would propose that we, for this next year, maybe meet in the middle at half the cost with some payment plans for those that want it. And then maybe take it a year by year or every 2 years and reassess it rather than opening it wide open and have to backpedal. Because once you backpedal, when you open it up, it gets kind of contentious. So I think we're kind of in an experimental process, but I like the idea. And by the way, I will concur to the Main Street. Carrie's done a great job on the uniform decorations and the flowers and the umbrellas. It really adds some consistency. So I'm really encouraged by that. And the only other thing I would add on there, just kind of trying to think this through, is if there are no parameters, what if somebody wants one 10 blocks down? I mean, it's kind of a weird scenario. So I don't know. I think there should be some parameters that we probably at some point come into. It should be in the downtown core, and maybe some parameters of how far off the downtown core. I don't know. But that would be something I would hope that we would be conscientious of. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I did forget to mention one thing. Throughout the duration of the pilot project, the city has also been paying the specific tax as required by the state, a leasehold excise tax. So that while that has been de minimis to the city, should we begin, or should council choose to start charging for these, that is something that council would need to determine whether the city would continue to pay that tax or pass that along to the users of the parklets, which, for example, is something that Bellingham, I believe, does as well.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I had the opportunity to be at the Puyallup Main Street Association board meeting last night, and I was appreciative of the interaction that we had, because these are our businesses in the core of downtown that are bringing people to the community. And some of the feedback that I heard was that it's the parklets that were on the east side of Meridian are not utilized as much because of the hot sun. So out in front of, oh goodness, I'm going to mess up the name. Thank you, Perry's. It actually wasn't used very much because it was too hot to sit in. But in front of the Forum and in front of Wicked Pie, it was utilized quite a bit more. But also over in front of the Rose and in front of Licks, it was utilized even when the businesses were not open. And so I really appreciate the feedback that I heard from the Puyallup Main Street Association board, because these parklets it's like it's a combination of uses, right? It's an extension of parks, right? It's an extension of spaces for people to be and to rest and to enjoy community. But along Meridian, it seems like it's more business oriented, so to speak. Like it is actually an extension of the restaurants. So I'm curious if we can create something that would be an extension of the parks, but then also create opportunity for businesses if they wanted to pay for it, because it would be an extension of more of their business. I don't want to convolute this whole thing, but I do like the idea of the extension of the parks and supporting local business. Maybe all we do pass along is the tax and maintenance fees for these. Keep the cost low to continue to serve our businesses, to continue to serve our constituents, to continue to serve guests that come in from out of Puyallup because they want to eat and play in Puyallup. How do we keep the cost low to make that happen and reasonable for our businesses, but also be an extension for parks? So I'm of the mind that I would love to continue the parklets for another year. I love the extension idea, but create some wisdom around how we best serve our businesses and not create a more burden for them. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. May I remind all of our members, and I think we're all aware of this, that we cannot give public assets to anyone without getting something in return. And what we get in return is whether it's a product or a public benefit. And if we see a public benefit to that, and it can be somewhat intangible, but in your mind it's enough to compensate for our costs, then it can be, we can justify that. With that, I believe Councilmember Adler, you had your hand up. Councilmember Adler, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Now?
You're very faint. Can you try one more time?
How about now?
There you go.
Apologies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dan, I have a few questions for you. I am particularly interested in understanding better the outreach that was conducted to our businesses ahead of this being placed on our agenda. I appreciate Councilmember Gilliam sharing the conversation that she had last night, it sounds like, with Main Street. I also appreciate Councilmember Johnson's comments. Both of my colleagues spoke to many of the things that I was planning to say, so I won't belabor those points again. But I am curious in that conversation with the businesses. Are you able to shine a little light on that, please?
Yes, I can shine some light on that. So Meredith Neal reached out to the businesses that utilized the parklets last year, inquiring about their feedback. Would they, should council decide to charge a cost? And I believe she did provide the $1,500 cost of what it is to the city, to the businesses. Based off of that, would that be something that they were interested in continuing? We heard back from 6 of the businesses that used last year, to my knowledge. Again, several of them said that, just paraphrasing, that should council choose the $1,500 figure, the sales benefits that the parklets provide isn't enough to offset that $1,500. We did hear from Wicked Pie, who indicated that yes, they would be willing to do the $1,500. However, a lower amount would be preferable. It is one of the more popular parklets around. Anthem's response was, again, the same. Yes, they would be willing to pay the $1,500. They would, of course, love a reduced amount, but they get a giant benefit of that parklet just outside of their location.
So, Meredith did her outreach recently, or last year, or when?
This outreach was conducted in the last several days.
Okay. Thank you for that. I also appreciate the comments, citizen comments this evening. When I was briefly briefed on this item, I actually said pretty quickly that I would not be in favor of the full $1,500 amount or whatever. I did immediately go to, I think half is appropriate, because I am not convinced that a appropriate conversation has happened with our businesses that are downtown that already utilize the parklets. And so I think at that point I felt like half was appropriate. But I frankly think that we could benefit from ongoing conversations with our businesses and how to get this right and how to do it better. I'm very sensitive to our downtown businesses. I'm sensitive to business, small business throughout our city, but particularly food service. You know, we heard it again in citizen comments tonight. inflationary period that we're going through right now, and everything else, I feel as though I would be most supportive this evening of a year extension. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Councilmember Whitting.
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of recap a little bit how we got here as a potential framework for our discussions this evening. During COVID, our local businesses couldn't have people in their restaurants initially. So we had to do something to help. We could not leave our businesses hanging out there that way. So we came up with the Parklet program and put those in place to support our local businesses. Well, COVID's behind us now, and the Parklets are still here. So you know, at what point does the Parklet program need to transition from we've got to do this to help our businesses to a point where the businesses are expanding their business, their dining rooms are being expanded so that now the Rose doesn't just have some counters and a few tables, they've got a few more tables, and each of the restaurants has expanded their dining area, and again, the primary purpose for these parklets was to support our local restaurants. So do we go back where we were before? And you know, this is an additional cost to the city. Do we go back to the point where we were before and all the restaurants just continue doing their thing in their restaurants? I'm not in favor of that. I like the Parklet program. I like the idea that we have more foot traffic and more people dining and enjoying the ambiance of Puyallup streets. But I am in line with some of my colleagues that there is the primary benefit to these is to the restaurants. You know, people can come and sit in them on the off hours, but the real reason we're having them there is to encourage the commercial activity that takes place, and there are park benches scattered around the city that people can sit at. So I think it's some more than a $10 fee is appropriate. So I think I'm going to line up with Councilmember Johnson and say let's split the difference, and the city can pay for perceived public benefit, and the restaurants can pay for their half of the perceived business benefit, and we can do that for a year period and see how that works, and then revisit this a year down the road. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you tell me a little bit more about the taxes that are incurred in Bellingham?
I cannot speak to the taxes that are incurred in Bellingham, but I can speak to the leasehold tax on the parklets each quarter for the city of Puyallup. So Finance Director Barbara Lopez was able to provide me a screenshot of what was paid, estimating out, this was all estimated out by our finance department, a total rent received of $1,360.80, and then an excise tax from that of 12.84%, totaling $174.73.
Gotcha. Could I defer to Kirk Lee really quick?
Thank you. Just for clarification, what Bellingham and the leasehold excise tax, some might not know what that is. Anytime that a public entity leases out public property to a private entity,
right,
there's a leasehold excise tax that a public entity has to charge. And so the state Department of Revenue, after parklets became more prominent throughout the region, made a determination that a city, if providing space, public space for these parklets, had to charge the leasehold excise tax. It's 12.84% of whatever the lease amount is. So that's what the city clerk was talking about in Bellingham.
Gotcha. Thank you. Moving on, the $1,500 that's being proposed, and that's just for the maintenance and the install and removal of these parklets every year, correct?
So just to clarify, Deputy Mayor King, that's not what I'm proposing. That's just what the estimation was by our streets division of the total cost to the city to install the parklets, remove the parklets, and then do the annual maintenance.
I stand corrected. Yes, you are correct. It was not a proposal. What about can you, just for the public knowledge, could you talk a little bit more about the liability to the city and the businesses regarding the insurance and what they are required and what's required of the city?
Yes. So our legal department and our risk advisor work with myself. They review and they provide recommendations from WCIA about the required insurance. The city has to be an additional insured party on these. And the requirement that has been put forth for these is a $2 million aggregate, or $2 million per incident, $2 million aggregate. In contrast to that, for example, when we have a special event that occurs, say there's a proposal for a Mardi Gras event, in fact, just up the street here, the required insurance for that is a $1 million, $2 million aggregate. So it is slightly higher because people are, for example, outside of Wicked Pie, it's a parklet right on Meridian. It's right next to a main road, so there is an increased risk to the city and to the business owner should an accident occur or something happen because it isn't a roadway.
And just for public knowledge, does the city pay for that or does the business pay for that?
The business pays for that.
Right.
And that is what one of our businesses indicated last year, that due to their increased insurance rate, that policy alone, Wicked Pie let us know, that was a $1,500 premium.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate that Main Street, along with Meredith, worked together to increase the uniformity of all the parklets and making them all look uniform and as not a hodgepodge of everyone's decorations. And I appreciate how they look, and they really do spruce up the city with the way that we've been able to maintain them this year. I'm a little torn with the idea of not charging for this public benefit, but at the same time being able to recover some of those costs, especially for the type of project that it is. I would, just as a proposal idea with my colleagues, I know that I've heard split the difference of $750 perhaps. I would like to take it one step further, just to be able to help with the ongoing costs with these programs, with this program. I would like to propose a 3-year staggered payment to this program. The first year being $500, the second year moving it up to $1,000, and the third year moving it up to $15, and then after that, evaluate and make sure that it is covering the costs for this program. But to be able to limit the charge to these businesses, but being able to continue the program and being able to maintain them and put them in and take them out and store them and have city staff be able to do all of those things. I would like to kind of ease that burden a little bit and just propose a 3-year term of $500, $1,000, $1,500, and then evaluate and make sure that those costs are covered there on out. So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor King. Before I move on to Councilmember Johnson, I'd like to weigh in on this. I think we need to look back in history for a little bit more accuracy. We had actually discussed parklets far before COVID. It had been a subject because we wanted to revitalize our downtown area. And if you'll remember, a number of years ago, when many of us were just fresh faces here, the downtown, the sidewalks had not been power washed, the daffodils had not been painted, the benches were all broken, they had moss on them. People had neglected the downtown area, and we were going to turn it around. And one of the ideas that came out is this parklet concept. And the idea is with parklets is they psychologically, they narrow a road. Traffic automatically slows down when you move a parklet in. And it was an effect that other jurisdictions have been using to a good effect that attract people to the downtown area. Now, we had been discussing that, and I was an advocate of these. And then when COVID came along, it served a dual purpose. We, at that point, if I'm correct, those parklets were paid for out of money that we received, COVID grants, to somehow mitigate COVID impact. So we utilized that situation to implement a program we have been talking about for a long time. And now look at our downtown area. Our downtown is thriving. We are at 95 to 100% occupancy in our downtown area. It is booming. I have people asking for more spaces there. In other words, what we did, it added, granted, Puyallup Main Street Association and a lot of people have added to this, but it was a very good component. And especially now that we've gone to uniformity with the flower pots, downtown Puyallup looks more beautiful than it has since I was a kid, when everybody used to go down there because that's where everybody went. But it was a ghost town, of course, and you've heard my stories growing up here, is that during the 70s and 80s, that place was a ghost town. Well, we are light years ahead. So I guess my point to this is, it's a tremendous public benefit, what we have done down there. And to take those parklets away, I think, would be kind of a sin, as far as I'm concerned, because they have added so much to the ambiance of that and the kind of however you want to call it, ambiance is a good word, to our downtown area. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think the public benefit is well worth, even if we have to $750, it's going to cost us $5,200 a year. $5,250 just if we cut it in half. And I'm thinking to myself, is that really worth it? I mean, I think we would gladly appropriate the money every single year, that much money, to get the ambiance and the effect that we have downtown. So my whole point is it's zero. We realize this is a public benefit. Now, they may be making money, but I have to tell you, when you go down that road, it makes the entire downtown more attractive. And especially when people are sitting there with a glass of wine or whatever they're doing, it makes our downtown look like $1 million. And the fact that near the Rose, for example, you may have people using it after hours as kind of a park, that's just a bonus as far as I'm concerned. So the fact that they have to pay insurance costs and they're covering that, and that we had these paid for by COVID relief funds, very valid use, because it did play that purpose too, but it has really enhanced our downtown. I think it's worth the $5,250 every year for us just to say we'll pay it. So I'd say, why don't we continue this 2 years? I like that. I think it's a decent compromise. The cost, zero. The selection process would be through a lottery. We do that. And then I do think we have to limit the parameters. I don't want these over near my neighborhood, okay? I live way, I'm being facetious. The point is we do have to have some geographic idea of what we're trying to do. And so I would say let's hone it in, whether it be the core business district or whatever the case may be, so that when we do have that lottery come up, we don't have people applying that are way outside that it really isn't going to add to the ambiance and the public benefit is minimal. So that's my proposal. Okay, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, again, as I mentioned from the get-go, I mean, this is not going to break our budget, whether we give it for $10 or zero or we charge half. I just think we need to acknowledge, that businesses, for the most part, most all of them have some benefit. And I think that our constituent, Tim would say that he's probably making some resources off of that, and that's great. I guess I'm just trying to figure out precedent. Are we showing, some kind of favoritism with this luck of the lottery for our public benefit. Others that want to get on board, are we, kind of saying, well, sorry, you didn't make the lottery? I think there should be some clear parameters. But let's just say hypothetically, the lottery, puts them in some obscure places that don't come down. Because I think, if I'm understanding, Mayor, I think most of the car shows and things are happening right down Meridian. They're not going to be off Meridian too much. So what if the lotto happens to where a lot of them are off Meridian and we've now vacated the Meridian because of the ones that are noticed so much? So should there be some preference, to that corridor, which is what creates this ambiance? I don't know. And then the other thought is, let's just say hypothetically, the lotto turns out that there's hardly any on Meridian because others off of Meridian have got it because there's no parameters set. What if the question is raised, well, will we really want one? I don't know how much those things cost to make anyway, if we made one. Is there any guesstimation what those things cost to make?
I know that each parklet was made using the American Rescue Plan Act federal funds. I don't know what that cost was for each parklet.
Yeah.
Councilman, excuse me, City Manager Kirkley, do you remember that cost?
I say it's like 5,000 to 6,000, something like
Was
that.
we built it, correct?
Yeah, we built them. Our Parks Department, Parks Maintenance built the parklets.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, they're built like battleships.
Yeah.
They are.
And
yes.
if we would have had to pay those to be made, I'm thinking $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah, and the tables that are used and the umbrellas are last year were provided by Main Street Association. So it is a partnership between the city and Main Street Association, in addition to the flower boxes that they added last year.
Councilmember Johnson, if you'd like to continue your comments.
Yeah, I'm just really concerned about this. If we take away the costs and we have increased people in the business core begin to apply down the road, we may perhaps have shot ourselves in the foot, and they're no longer down the murder core, which we've seen. So I'm really concerned about this. If there is some value, the places along the corridor are going to pay for those because it provides some business value. I agree with you. There is some public benefit to have those on the corridor, but again, if the intention of what we've noticed before, if we lose that, I'm concerned. So I'm not against what you're saying. I just want to make sure we're thinking it through before we realize we didn't know that was going to happen. I mean, you put it well, Mr. Mayor. You always talk about good intentions but unintended consequences, and I'm concerned that tonight's discussion maybe might be there. Have we thought it through? And I don't want to back up and then disenfranchise some people. So I'm wondering, maybe should we table this for a bit, so to speak, let staff work on this with Meredith and come up with a plan, or are we ready to make a decision tonight? I'm all for it either way. I just want to pose the question.
Thank you for that. There is no motion that is being asked for this evening. This is a discussion. And so we don't have to take action. We don't have to table it because there's no motion in front of us. We could say, Dan, go back and compile all of our comments into a legible manner and bring it back in the form of a proposal that we can go ahead, or proposals that we can select from. Which we could do that. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that if you were to make a motion based on your comments a few moments ago, that I would happily be a second. But to Councilmember Johnson's point related to tabling this per se, or holding on making a decision on this today, because I do agree with Councilmember Johnson that I think we with staff have some work to do. I also am in support of that. I just want to reiterate that I think that we need to continue engaging with the businesses and trying to better understand the best path forward for them so we can continue the strong partnership. Partnership. And so those are my final comments on this for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Remind me, just as a clarification, didn't we have one of these parklets completely destroyed by a car crash over by Anthem?
I would not say that it was completely destroyed. I know that we had a parklet that was damaged by a vehicle, and our city staff were able to repair that and put it back into use for last year.
So it was repaired?
Yes.
Gotcha. Do you know what the liability outcome of that was, and how did that transpire?
I don't have that information, no, sir.
No. Fortunately, no one was in the parklet. It was the one in front of Wicked Pie. And it was bumped by a vehicle and rolled towards the alley right by Wicked Pie. And we were able to repair it.
Councilmember Adler, are you still on the call?
Yes.
Wasn't the one in front of Anthem completely mangled?
Yeah. Yes, there was a situation at Anthem, and I do believe it was an impaired driver.
Do you remember, does anybody recall that one?
I vaguely remember that. We can find out more on it. It has been repaired. I know that we haven't had to build any new ones.
So we haven't lost any?
No, we have not lost
even though they've been hit, all of those things? Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking from a liability standpoint what that looks like, and I just want to take that into consideration. So that way we are protecting our citizens and also the investment that we are putting forth. And so first and foremost is the safety that I'm thinking about. But with everything in life, we all have risks. So, but we just have to manage that to the best of our ability. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I propose, Dan, that you go ahead, compile a synopsis of what was said this evening, taking into account the continuation of how long, the costs, and then the options that came forward, and the selection process, and then the geographic limitations, including what Councilmember Johnson said, not just geographic, but probably more streets. So that we, in fact, if there's a public benefit that we're gaining from this, we don't lose this by putting it on someplace where that's just not to be had. Okay. With that, if there's no further discussions, I will go ahead and move on to the next agenda item. Is that okay, members? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, let's move on to 6B, our federal lobbyist presentation. And if we could have City Manager Steve Kirkley come forward and introduce Jen Covino.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can just do it from the dais.
Okay, that's
right. Thank you. So at the last year during the budget deliberations, one thing that we heard very clearly from council was the desire to have more representation at the federal level by the city, also relative to our grants and being more competitive with our grant process and connections to the congressional delegation back in Washington, D.C. City put out an RFP. We received various responses from it, went through an interview process, and selected Covino, Smith, and Simon as our federal lobbyist. And so before you this evening is Jen Covino. She's the president of Covino, Smith, and Simon, has been with the company since 2011, has a BA from Boston University and a master's in public administration from George Washington. And so she's going to, I know she's met a few of you, but she's going to introduce herself, her firm, and then go over just some critical points from federal government relative to local government. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jen, welcome.
Good evening to the mayor, to the council, and Steve, thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Jen Covino, and as mentioned, I am the president of Covino, Smith & Simon, and it is my honor to have the opportunity to present to you all tonight and to offer federal affairs support to the city as we move forward here during the 119th session of Congress. Just to give you a brief overview of our work, I got started in working on behalf of our company, which is formerly known as Simon & Company, back in 2011. Our firm has been in business since 1987 and has provided support to cities, counties, and other units of local government, such as housing authorities, transportation agencies, and local education agencies since 1987. We're going on our 8th presidential administration, and we're very proud to work on a bipartisan basis with both the executive branch and the legislative branch. As mentioned, I've been with the firm starting as an associate back in 2011, taking the helm of the company back at the beginning of 2019. And so I am now going on my 4th presidential administration, and this will be the 2nd time around working with the Trump administration. So we're looking forward to not only helping you to engage with the executive branch, but as well as your congressional delegation, where we've had many years of experience supporting other clients in Washington state. Our specialty is federal affairs assistance, again, as mentioned, for units of local government, and we divide our roles and responsibilities into maybe 5 or 6 different silos, and that's obviously legislative advocacy, working with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, not only including your delegation, but other relevant committees of jurisdiction on any given policy area that's of interest, as well as congressional leaders or appropriations committee leaders as it's appropriate to do so. We also perform regulatory analysis, translating notices of proposed rulemaking so you understand that any regulatory initiatives or executive actions coming out of the executive branch, what those local government impacts will be back there at home. I think most of our return on investment is guiding you through federal funding opportunities and providing support to your staff in identifying programs that are well aligned with hopefully local projects and initiatives that you are already undertaking, just figuring out the best federal resources that we can identify and help you all to apply for in order to amplify your impact back there on the ground. And we cover the full range of federal funding opportunities, everything from workforce development funds, public safety funding, education funding, of course, affordable housing and infrastructure. And I know we're going to get the ball rolling on some requests over the weeks and months ahead. Finally, as I indicated, our entire client base is local government work. We're very proud to support the public sector. And so we're also there to be called upon in terms of supporting your intergovernmental relationship. So as you're talking about parklets, for instance, if we can ever be called upon to provide you all with other examples from cities we represent or best practices nationally, please consider us an extension of your city hall that's there just not only to support you on federal advocacy, but again, if you need insight on best practices elsewhere, happy to report what Washington, D.C. or San Francisco may be contemplating on parklets as an example. And finally, as you are working through any local challenges, again, offering connections to other mayors, city councils that are going through similar challenges and have identified best practices. We're there to support your staff thinking through opportunities and challenges alike from a national perspective. So that's an overview of our work. Certainly, it has been an exciting few weeks back here in Washington, D.C., and as I indicated, our firm is either proudly bipartisan or nonpartisan, and I'd prefer to think of us as being nonpartisan. We are there to serve as your liaison, again, not only to the congressional delegation, but perhaps sometimes more importantly to the White House and the executive agencies. We maintain a good working relationship with the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs because anytime there may be a crisis back there in your city, we want to ensure that if you are struck by a natural disaster, other tragedies, that you have a direct line of access to the executive branch and the resources that they can control and can utilize to support your constituents back there. So appreciate having the chance to provide that background to you. I want to quickly launch into an overview of the latest federal developments back here in Washington, D.C. And I want to stress that since this is my first time appearing before the council, I would just like to note that we are emphasizing developments of concern to units of local government, to city government operations, but I, of course, am happy at the end of this briefing to take questions that you may have about other issues that may individually impact your constituents, your small businesses, et cetera. Again, we cover the full federal landscape, but I will keep my remarks focused on potential impacts to city government operations here as we move forward in 2025. So quickly noting, you all know President Trump and Vice President Vance took office on January 20th, assuming office with the Republican governing trifecta across the executive and legislative branches back here in Washington, D.C. To date, 18 cabinet officials have been confirmed by the Senate, and the rest should be considered in very short order here. President Trump's first 100 days will end on April 30th, 2025. And if you can imagine, as is the case with any presidential transition, I believe the 47th president wants to set out and make some historic accomplishments here in his first 100 days in office. And he is certainly off to a fast-paced start. Just turning our heads over to Capitol Hill, I want to note that historically slim margins in the House and the Senate are complicating the governing process. So Majority Leader John Thune controls the Senate with 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. It's worth noting that that Republican majority lacks a filibuster-proof majority of 60 votes. That will require them to utilize the budget reconciliation process to advance many of the Trump-Vance administration's priorities, utilizing only a simple majority. Over in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson also has his work cut out for him. He was reelected to the helm at the beginning of the year. He currently has 218 Republican members of that House, 215 Democrats, with 2 current vacancies, and we anticipate one more GOP departure over the next few days or weeks. That'll leave a majority of only 217 to 215 until future vacancies are filled. Now, you may be aware of the fact that Congress is going to need to act very shortly here to come to a resolution on the fiscal year 2025 budget. Federal fiscal year 2025 started back on October 1st of last year. We're about midway through the year already. The current continuing resolution, which is a stopgap that's funding the federal government, will expire March 14th. Speaker Johnson and Majority Leader Thune have indicated that all options are on the table, whether they might need another short-term stopgap. But I think it's increasingly likely that lawmakers are going to attempt to pursue a full-year continuing resolution as opposed to an omnibus agreement that would actually reconcile the House and Senate's 12 spending bills. Well, why is this important for the city's awareness? Well, if Congress defaults to a full-year CR, as it's known back here in D.C., lawmakers are likely to drop out community project fund requests. That's a fancy term for earmarks for fiscal year 2025. That could include the city's pending $810,000 request that's been submitted by Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland for your Meeker Street project. And so I just wanted to flag the potential of this for your awareness. Obviously, we are back here encouraging lawmakers to come to a full year resolution and, if possible, to work out an omnibus agreement that would include those earmarks. But I have some potential good news in that lawmakers are indicating that if they default to a continuing resolution for fiscal year 2025, it's likely that members of Congress will take any projects requested in FY25 and shift them over to fiscal year 2026 for next year. So we are awaiting further guidance from both individual members of Congress, including Congresswoman Strickland, as well as the House and Senate Appropriations Committee on the status of that ongoing request. But I'm hopeful for you all that if it's not done in this fiscal year, it can be completed in the next cycle. Senator Murray, in her capacity as ranking member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, is continuing her efforts working in earnest to avoid that full-year continuing resolution, but Republican members believe it's becoming increasingly likely with so few days left before the 14th. As you know, likely from the nightly news, budget reconciliation is really the talk of the town back here in Washington, D.C. And again, reconciliation is that process by which the Republican lawmakers in the Senate will be able to utilize only a simple majority to pass some legislative provisions that produce changes to spending or revenue receipts with budgetary impacts that are not considered just merely incidental to proposed policy changes. Why is that the case? Well, the Senate has a parliamentary procedure known as the Byrd Rule that's in place to avoid legislation that ought not be passed with only a simple majority from moving through the chamber. It's been in place since the 1980s. and the Senate parliamentarian plays an important role scrubbing any reconciliation legislation for any provisions considered to be merely incidental. So if you've been paying attention, and no reason to assume you have been, last week the Senate passed its $340 billion budget resolution to kick off this budget reconciliation process. And they're hoping to pursue a two-step process that I believe we're all referring to as Plan B, that would focus on a more limited package that would include elements for border security as well as energy security without tackling tax reform in that package. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives earlier tonight passed its version that's being referred to as one big beautiful bill by President Trump that includes about $4.5 trillion of estimated funding increases to support tax reform, accompanied by $2 trillion worth of proposed spending cuts that have yet to be identified. This package will include national security components such as immigration resources and border security resources and some energy funding. And then we shift gears to economic policy. So obviously the president is interested in an extension of many of the provisions included in his hallmark Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. Amongst some policy changes that he's prioritizing would be an increase to the state and local tax deduction cap that may be of concern to some of your constituents. Many bipartisan lawmakers are also looking at tax reform as an opportunity to expand and modernize the low-income housing tax credit to incentivize the development of affordable housing, and I know that may be of interest to the city as we go forward. But I do want to note there are some major risks to some important financing tools that are being looked at as potential revenue offsets. Earlier this year, the House Budget and Ways and Means Committees circulated a 50-page menu that identified various revenues that could be generated, including revenues that could be generated by eliminating the federal tax exemption of interest on state and locally issued bonds, as well as the preferential status of other bonds that municipalities utilize to fund critical infrastructure development, including private activity bonds and Build America bonds. As you know, those municipal debt securities issued by the city are utilized to finance a variety of day-to-day obligations and important capital infrastructure projects such as roadways, affordable housing development, water infrastructure, schools, libraries, and police or fire stations. So I wanted to call your attention to the need to engage on that issue over the immediate weeks and days ahead. Of course, I know that some constituents may be wary of the fact that this proposal may include up to $880 billion worth of cuts to Medicaid and another $230 billion worth of cuts to SNAP. Although I will say those cuts have not yet been identified by the committees of jurisdiction that will provide their recommendations for the legislation moving forward. In addition, of course, there's always noise back here from Beltway insiders, and so some think tanks back here in Washington are offering their recommendations to lawmakers that would target some key programs of interest to local governments, including the HUD Community Development Block Grant Program, which, as you know, is utilized for public infrastructure in low to moderate income communities. That's being targeted for a 50% reduction, while the Department of Justice Burn JAG program, which provides critical support for law enforcement and public safety, is also potentially on the chopping block. So over the immediate month ahead, it's going to be really important for cities, hopefully including yours, to consider weighing in support of maintaining these key investments. Shifting gears over to the executive branch, as you are likely aware again from the news, the first month of the Trump-Vance administration has been dominated by the rapid issuance of a series of executive orders and other actions by President Trump. He has established the DOGE initiative to find efficiencies across the whole of federal government, to attempt to reduce administrative burdens, to pursue a deregulatory agenda, to reduce the federal workforce, and to realize an ultimate cost savings to taxpayers. Last month, the White House Office of Management and Budget issued Memorandum M-25-13 that instructed all federal agencies to pause all disbursement or obligation of federal financial assistance. However, that was quickly met with blowback from state and local governments and rescinded the next day with the issuance of OMB Memo M-25-14, but not before 2 lawsuits were filed. The first was filed by a coalition of nonprofits in Washington, D.C., and the second was filed by a coalition of 22 state attorneys general led by the state of New York up in Rhode Island at the U.S. District Court. Rhode Island Chief Judge John McConnell issued a temporary restraining order instructing the administration to not implement that freeze and to continue dispersing and obligating federal funds. This is important here to note. In a subsequent court filing, the U.S. Department of Justice clarified its interpretation that the judge's temporary restraining order ought not apply to federal agencies' separate and ongoing review of federal funding programs for their alignment and compliance with individual executive orders that had been promulgated by President Trump. And those executive orders include protecting the American people against invasion, which has some important changes for immigration policy, reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid, putting America first in international environmental agreements, which includes the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, unleashing American energy, which is an executive order that clarifies our national energy policy moving forward, but also instructs agencies to pause disbursement of any funds that are authorized by either the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which is formerly known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or authorized by the Inflation Reduction Act, which has some important implications for local governments who are relying on some surface transportation funding. There's also the Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI programs and preferencing EO, the Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government Executive Order, and finally, the Enforcing the Hyde Amendment Executive Order. In their court filing, the U.S. Department of Justice clarified that it did not interpret the judge's initial temporary restraining order to preclude the administration from moving forward with freezes associated with compliance with that list of executive orders. However, in additional filings, Judge McConnell clarified that he expected the administration to comply and release all federal funding to all grantees, and for the administration to not move forward with those reviews and delays associated with the other executive orders. Earlier today, District Judge Lauren Ali Khan from the U.S. District Court of the District of Columbia granted the coalition of nonprofits an additional request to enter into a preliminary injunction. I apologize for that very long-winded overview of all of that activity back here, but I understand the city, like every other city, has probably faced some uncertainty with its grant administration processes over the past few weeks. I am heartened to learn in my engagement in a meeting with the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs yesterday that those grantees who have an executed grant agreement should expect normal order to be restored over the days and weeks ahead, and for the administration to be moving beyond some of the initial pauses we saw. Moving on to the importance of some of the other executive actions, I wanted to note that with the Unleashing American Energy Executive Order that I previously mentioned, there's a pause on the infrastructure law funding and Inflation Reduction Act funding for alignment with the administration's energy goals. Every 4 years, we have a presidential transition, and it's totally normal for an incoming administration to parse through programs to see how they can adapt in real time to better prioritize their policy objectives. So what I would note is U.S. Department of Transportation is reviewing many of its investments. And so I want to note that city staff ought to be looking at either executed grant agreements or pending grant agreements to understand any level of risk still associated with those awards. There have been directives sent out to grantees if there are any perceived issues with previously awarded funding, and we're happy to walk through that process of troubleshooting if that challenge arises. With regard to priorities for infrastructure spending moving forward, I want to call your attention to the fact that newly confirmed Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has established some new discretionary criteria for infrastructure projects that will include prioritizing investments that benefit families first and foremost, as well as communities that have higher birth rates and marriage rates than the national average. The U.S. Department of Transportation is also issued an order entitled Ensuring Reliance Upon Sound Economic Analysis Across DOT Policies, Programs, and Activities. That's going to request that project sponsors more closely emphasize rigorous economic analysis and demonstrate financial efficiency to justify federal investments moving forward. So we're asking the city that any future project proposals should have a positive cost-benefit analysis with long-term sustainability demonstrated without need for additional federal investments. And so that's just helpful guardrails as you go forward trying to select infrastructure projects. And I know there are a host of different projects that you are all working on, and we look forward to supporting through submission of grant applications or earmark requests over the weeks and months ahead. Finally, on executive actions, you're likely aware that President Trump has signed nearly a dozen different executive orders related to immigration policy and enforcement. And I would be happy to clarify any questions you may have related to that sweep, but I don't want to go too deep into any of those tonight unless you have questions about them. Finally, last week, President Trump announced his appointments to the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, as I indicated, and that operation is going to be overseen by Director Alex Meyer, who's joining from having served on the campaign in 2024. He has about a decade of campaign experience. Yesterday, as I mentioned, I had the opportunity to meet with IGA Deputy Director Christine Serrano-Glasser, a former mayor from New Jersey, who's going to be managing the portfolio overseeing relationships with local governments directly. She's indicated that the IGA team is now getting fully staffed. Their last staff person got their laptop yesterday. They're undertaking onboarding and training. And so we'll look forward to sharing that contact information with the White House if that would be of interest to you all over the weeks and months ahead. Obviously, the federal agencies, now that cabinet level officials are getting installed, will also be sure to share personnel updates from each of the federal agencies to ensure that the city is connected with any agencies that would be of interest as we move forward. And of course, we'll also be happy to connect you with your congressional delegation and staff on Capitol Hill as important legislative developments happen over the weeks and months ahead. It's been an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to meet several of you back here in Washington, D.C., including Deputy Mayor King and Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Adler is here in town, and I hope to connect with her soon. And I look forward to hopefully meeting the rest of you in short order. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have. And thank you again for the opportunity to present this federal affairs update to you all tonight. My colleagues and I are looking forward to supporting your work at the federal level in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. You can take a breath now. That was extensive. Thank you. Councilmember Whitting, your name was up there, and I just want to give you the deference for that, whether you mistakenly took it back off. Can you tell me, do you need to ask a question?
As we came on, I just wanted to note that that Ms. Covino is located in D.C., and that's 3 hours ahead of us, and I was wondering if we might consider in future presentations that we give deference and consideration to her at putting her a little earlier in our agenda. And I don't, we've got a pretty fixed agenda, but I would recommend that we consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Deputy Mayor King.
Yeah, I think when she was off camera, she was able to have dinner and enjoy family time for the last 2 hours. So, Jen, it's a pleasure to see you once again. I had the pleasure of meeting you a few weeks back when Councilmember Johnson and myself came back and was able to meet with Senator Murray, Senator Cantwell, and U.S. House Representative Strickland regarding some federal funding request for our Meeker Street project, and kind of just putting it in their ear and reminding them not to forget about us here in Puyallup. And I greatly appreciate your professionalism and being able to learn and meet all the wonderful people that you have in your firm. I can understand why our city manager was very impressed with you, and your wealth of knowledge is well respected. So I appreciate that. And hopefully the mayor and myself will be able to come back in the next few months and hopefully be able to get some more work done with you and your team as well. So thank you very much for that update, and look forward to working with you some more. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Roy Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to take a moment to thank the council for bringing up the subject matter to look at hiring a federal representative to lobby on our behalf for potential federal funding for some of the projects that we have in mind and will have in mind in the future. I do recall hearing from prior council members in decades past that there was some representation on the national level, but for whatever reason, it was dropped and never got picked up until recently. So I want to thank our colleagues and together for council for doing that. Secondarily, I'd like to thank Steve, our city manager, for taking that direction from council and having an interview process to determine, which firm or representative in DC would best represent and advocate on our interest. Upon meeting Jen and her firm, and then upon hearing her tonight, I'm absolutely convinced, Steve, that you made the absolute perfect hire on choosing her. And it's not that because I like her, which I do, but because of her wealth of knowledge to be able to speak to us on the understanding of talk about bureaucracy. We think we got bureaucracy in a city and bureaucracy in a state. Think about the bureaucracy in DC. That is a bureaucracy. And someone that understands that and to navigate through that is really remarkable. As I'm hearing her go off like she's talking about, baking a cake, like she knows everything about it. She's not reading notes, she's just doing it. So that's remarkable. And the other thing I appreciated about you, Jen, both then and now, and then hearing you publicly, you're able to talk in a neutral manner without getting political hot buttons, to be able to talk about elected officials and the policies and the proposals they have. It's so many times when people talk about right or left, there's always this kind of tainted personal whatever that's behind it. For you, it's almost like hearing factual information, which is really what we want. We want to take the politics out of it, even though all of us have political views and opinions. That's certainly okay. But when we're dealing with factual data and realities, it's good to be able to articulate that in a way to help advocate on behalf of our city. And you've done a masterful job in remaining neutral and just stating what we're working with and knowing how to navigate through that in a way that's going to benefit our city. So all that being said, I'm really pleased with the future opportunities for our city to be able to attain funding, also to be able to work with our, at a higher level, to work with our elected officials, specifically our local congressionalwoman and our two senators, in a manner that we haven't done in probably over a decade or more. So I think this is a great opportunity to develop a relationship with them, and I welcome that on behalf of the constituents that we all share, both them and us. So that's all I had. Just some comments on that, and very grateful. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Couple questions. Jen, do you come up with a regular memo that you distribute? And if you do, on what periodic basis do you do that?
Hi, Mayor. So we are happy to include you on as many or as few of our materials as you'd like. We do 2 regular weekly updates every Friday. The first is our Washington Friday report. I'd like to say that covers all the big topics of the week and most of our human infrastructure, soft infrastructure, so labor and workforce, criminal justice, appropriations processes, all of that's in our Friday report. And because of the infrastructure law that was passed, we separated out a separate update focused solely on federal funding for infrastructure purposes, along with any important regulatory updates on infrastructure. So that covers transportation systems, energy, broadband, housing. And so we send those 2 updates on a Friday. We also communicate to staff, and we're happy to include the electeds as well, on grant memos that we will put out in real time. If you can imagine, things are a little bit slow here given the transition and the pause on some of the federal funding going on right now. But on a weekly basis, we're probably sending anywhere from 3 to 5, 6, maybe even 10 a week different grant opportunities. So sometimes we try to distribute those to department level staff to not inundate your inboxes that I know are already full of constituent concerns. And then in addition, I think it's a little more important, we will also do big, important real-time updates on major issues of concern to local government. So I will just say this, back during the American Rescue Plan Act, when folks were wondering whether or not there was going to be relief for state and local governments, we were sending out some 4 a.m. emails in real time. I hope you all put your notifications on and go to sleep since we're a little bit further ahead here on the East Coast. But when those really important things happen, as may be the case over the weeks ahead with things like municipal bonds, we will alert you to those developments in real time if you'd like to be included on those alerts.
Thank you. I think that certainly the Friday reports to all of my colleagues would be excellent. The more specific memos, grant memos, distributed to Steve Kirkley, and we have a grant writer which we fund, whose job is to, again, facilitate this for all of a variety of departments. At a minimum, I would think that that grant memo would go to that person, and they would be very happy to get that from you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jen, I couldn't have done it better myself. So thank you. It is a pleasure to have you on board here at Puyallup. I agree with much of what Councilmember Johnson said. It is long past due, in my opinion, that Puyallup has a federal lobbyist, and I think it's long past due that Puyallup ensured that we have a seat at the table in Congress, if you will, and certainly with the executive branch. I just wanted to say that I would recommend that your Friday report include myself and my colleagues here on the dais. I have seen them. I think several of them have been forwarded to us by staff. But they are very well written, and just how fast things are moving, and particularly given the current budget situation, I truly believe that my colleagues and myself would appreciate seeing those updates directly. So thank you.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. I just want to remind the public that we have done this because the fact of the matter is you pay federal taxes, and there are programs out there that come from the federal government to benefit the public, and you're paying taxes. We want to make sure that there is a return on your taxes that go to specific programs, worthwhile things. And this type of a arrangement, through the advice of many other cities, we have been told, in fact, will allow people in this community who pay hard-earned money in our taxes to return get grants that will pay for roads, that will pay for, essential infrastructure that you need. Again, things, kind of the meat and potatoes that are out there. We're doing economic development in our downtown core. For example, we have a grant that you heard Jen refer to that sounds like maybe a little bit on the razor's edge when it comes to whether it will go forward or not. We, hope springs eternal, so we hope that we will see that happen. We think it's a very worthwhile cause in our community. We're building another one of these economic development attractions closer to the fair. We're in the process of doing that right now. So with that, if there's no further comments, and Jen, if you would like to provide some closing remarks, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I have noted what Councilmember Whitting has said, and hopefully we'll kind of get you at 9 o'clock or whatever it would be, 3 o'clock, whatever the time would be earlier than what we're talking to you right now. So with that, proceed.
Oh, well, actually, the timing worked well because I got to put my son to bed and he's long asleep. So this was excellent timing and a good test of my fortitude. So I appreciate the opportunity tonight. One thing I want to stress is just you'll notice budget reconciliation. We expect this to be a behemoth package. It'll likely be 1,000 pages long. Our team, as soon as that draft bill text will be ready to synthesize it, boil it down. It may still end up being a 3 to 4 page summary. I apologize in advance for that, but we'll be focusing in on those key elements that are of consequence to city operations. But I want to say with that caveat, if you are fielding any constituent concerns, if you're fielding concerns from your small businesses, your nonprofit partners, institutions of higher education, I want to just let you know, please call upon us to troubleshoot any of those questions they may have. As a small business owner myself, I just want you to know, our mantra is to serve your community first and foremost. I think that belief that my predecessor, Len Simon, established has given us the staying power with many of the communities we're so fortunate to serve. And so even if it's sort of outside of the realm of local government operations, chances are we are well aware of the subject matter and acquainted to that. We're always happy to jump in and support your community partners as you go forward. So please let me know however we can be of service to you, particularly as there are so many changes occurring back here in Washington, D.C. in real time. We're here 24/7. I know Steve has my cell number. If anyone else needs it, please coordinate with staff and make sure that you've got that. And we're here if, God forbid, anything ever happens and you need a federal partner to be responsive, call me anytime, day or night. We're 24/7. So thank you so much again for this opportunity. We are so grateful for the opportunity to partner with the city and to support your very important work at the federal level.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. By the way, just to note, that was Jen Covino, our lobbyist in Washington, D.C. So thank you for being here. Now we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is we're coming to the end, our city manager's report. City Manager Steve Kirkley, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief just to let you know that your next meeting, which is March 11th, there will be the first reading of the ordinance pertaining to the Puyallup's comprehensive plan. Again, that's first reading of the ordinance. As you know, it takes 2 readings to approve something, so certainly that will not be the first time that you'll be discussing the comprehensive plan. And then also staff hopes to bring a downtown economic development project that we've been working on to present to you at that meeting as well. Those would be the 2 main items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. Let's now move on to council reports. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not much to report. I am in Washington, D.C., reporting live once again. This is related to my day job. I appreciate all of you and your flexibility and understanding, as well as our residents, for me having to participate virtually, duty calls. And unfortunately, I will also be participating virtually again on March 11th because I will be out here again, but attending the National League of Cities Congressional Summit. So that will be on official business for the city. But again, just very much appreciate everyone's flexibility and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castma. One thing I can report on is we met with the Puyallup Main Street Association Board last night, and they are absolutely thriving in all of the supports that they do for our city. Come to find out, and I believe the community may already know, but the Puyallup Farmers Market, the pop-up Farmers Market, is the 15th largest in, the world. The world, because they're part of a system that tracks it globally. And so they've been able to identify as a pop-up, right? A pop-up farmers market, 15th largest in the world here in Puyallup. So, of course, Meeker Days is on the works, and SIP Puyallup is on the works. So Puyallup Main Street Association is doing a fantastic job bringing people into our community and supporting our local businesses. So I'm a huge fan and very proud of all of their great work. So thank you, Mayor Castro.
Thank you for serving on as our representative on that board. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it pretty short here. Appreciate our dialogue tonight. As speaking for myself, as imperfect as I am, and perhaps as imperfect as occasionally we all might be, it seems that there is a great dialogue. And so I really appreciate this council and the tenor of civility, open discussion, and yet coming to a consensus of moving forward. We didn't have that years ago. When you look back at prior councils, it was a little toxic and a little intense, and not putting any blame on anybody, it's just a chapter in life. But I do appreciate the council and the culture, because it's good for our residents to have a team that shares different political lenses, philosophical lenses, different lenses. But at the end of the day, we arrive at through discussion and consensus, we arrive at a conclusion and we move on. We don't, harpoon each other at some point down the road on the next one. So a real testament. Thank you, Mayor, for your leadership and helping to keep that moving forward and set precedents for the future. And then, of course, just a major shout out to our dear friend Marla, who is watching us all the time. And I want to apologize, Marla. I don't know what camera is on me here. Is it this one here? Yeah, Marla, I want to apologize. I've missed you the last couple of times. So this is like a 3-time shout out to you, Marla. The best to you. Thank you. God bless.
Just a little background. I think I went to high school with her, just so you know that. I believe I did. Okay, with that, Councilmember Whitting, please.
I just wanted to mention the Puyallup property tax exemption seminar, which took place yesterday. We hosted it here in the city. The mayor and I were in attendance from the council. Paul Herrera from the county council was there, and newly elected Marty Campbell from our new county assessor was in attendance. And basically that seminar explains the process by which senior and disabled citizens who make less than about $64,000 a year can get a break on their property taxes. And I just think as property taxes are climbing, that's a really important thing that we communicate. So I'm taking this opportunity to let people know that even if you missed the seminar, you can get in touch with the county assessor's office to get more information. They also have programs on house weatherization and maintenance kinds of things that can be done free of charge to the homeowner. So some pretty great benefits there, and I think this is a particularly appropriate time to host this seminar from the standpoint that everybody's just received their property tax bill for 2025, and I suggested to the county assessor that we'd like to host another one of these in March of next year, halfway between the time we get those notices and the time we have to pay those taxes. So I think this is a great thing and good for our city and our citizens to have that hosted, and we need to let as many people know as possible about the opportunities they have if they're so qualified. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that program. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to report on tonight other than, there it is. Good night, Marla.
Okay. With that, I think you've all made excellent comments, and I certainly am very flattered that we are such a large farmers market and that we are such a place to congregate. We have had actual consultants do research, and Puyallup is the meeting place for Eastern Bruce County. Whether you're out in Eatonville, whether you're out in Ording, Bonnie Lake, or whatever, this is just a very natural meeting place, and will become even more so because of the synergies of the businesses, Puyallup Main Street Association, what we have going on in our parks, just the plethora of businesses and activities we have going on. So that's all very good news. And with that, I really have no further information or news to add. I think you've all done an excellent job. With that, we're going to adjourn. I want to thank the public for viewing us today. Thank you.